It's been another day of rage across Nigeria as the End Bad Governance enters its third day, an action which went peacefully in some parts but turned violent in others. From Lagos to the nation's capital, Abuja, to Plateau, many Nigerians made good their promise to continue a 10-day protest to express their anger and frustration over the harsh economic conditions of the country. Amid this protest, President Bola Tinubu will address the nation in the broadcast on Sunday, August 4th, 2024 at 7 a.m. local time. Special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajirin Galale, made this known in a statement on Saturday. In the meantime, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, says President Tinubu is monitoring the End Bad Governance protests across the country. Nigeria's recent protests are owing to the high cost of living, worsened by the floating of the naira and the stoppage of fuel subsidy removal by the government. Although there have been calls for the president to address the nation after demonstrations enter the third day, the president is yet to yield to that. However, Bagudu said the president is aware of the situation and is monitoring and listening carefully to hear what is being said and noting all concerns. In Lagos, the End Bad Governance protests are still going strong as it enters the third day, with people still perplexed whether the president is listening to their plights or demands. News Central's Chidima Ona has this to say.
The third day of protesters' agitation, and with clear signs, demonstrations does not look like it will be ending soon. Although turnout has wavered, residents of Lagos are still adamant on letting their cries heard.
What we are demanding for is not far-fetched. We have 15 demands, but like I will say, my major argument is point on one. That is bringing hunger to the barest minimum. The corruption in Nigerian security is too much. The custom is one of the most corrupt institutions in Nigeria. As I speak to you, a bag of rice from Cameroon is no more than 20,000 naira. A bag of rice. But you will not believe, when you get to Nigeria border in Nikom, Nigeria custom, because of their greed and corruption, they want to seize your rice and compel you to pay 30,000 or more to allow one rice to pass through the border.
How can you tell me that there is no money, you are buying yachts? There's no money, you are buying private jets, and you are saying Nigerians should endure. But you did not wait for 1 year, you bought yacht. You did not wait for 1 year, you bought private jet. And now we are saying wait till when?
Here in Ojota area, where protesters gathered, they insisted on marching forward because they did not want to be confined to a spot. This brought a brief argument between protesters and security officials on the ground. This scuffle was quickly resolved at the presence of the Lagos Commissioner of Police.
It has been very peaceful, and the protesters have been behaving very well. We give kudos to them. They have been peaceful, and their attitude is commendable. And you can see my men too. We are around them and making sure that nothing negative happens to them.
Protest is not done in one place. I am saying it. We have the right to move around. Freedom of movement is the right of every Nigerian. Yes. As far as we want to go, we need to go to different locations. Now, the location is our own, is our personal opinion. Our decisions, it might be personal to us for now, but anywhere is not limited. Even the government house is not limited. Even Aso Rock is not limited. It is our right.
As the End Bad Governance, hunger protests continue across the country, Lagos remains a special focus, following the scar that trailed the EndSARS protest of 2020. And this may not be unconnected with the deployment of heavy security personnel from the first day. In Lagos for News Central, Chidima Ona.
Heavily armed thugs in company of police operatives dispersed protesters at the ongoing End Bad Governance protest, which held in the nation's capital, Abuja. While the police used tear gas canisters to disperse the protesters, the thugs were seen holding dangerous weapons, including jackknives and guns. Our correspondents, who were live at the scene of the attack, had to scamper for safety not to be caught in the crossfire. In the midst of the economic hardship experienced by many Nigerians, many in Plateau State say there is a place of humanity. According to these protesters, unity remains the watchword while exercising their civic rights as seen during their peaceful protests. News Central's Chizoba Anyanwe tells us more.
As protesters continue to gather at the popular Old Airport roundabout in Jos, acts of unity and humanity have been playing out. This was evident when the Muslim faithful were praying while their Christian counterparts provided shield for them, as they were seemingly not within the Muslim-dominated area orchestrated by the many civil unrests that had bedeviled the state in recent time. Another act of unity and humanity that stood tall for the protesters in Jos is the act of cleanliness, even while protesting bad governance in Nigeria. Troops of Operation Safe Haven were seen providing security for them while they swept the protest ground for the third day of the exercise. Despite these acts worthy of emulation, some protesters poured out their hearts as the reason for shelving their personal engagements to join in the protests.
The withdrawal of fuel subsidy and insecurity, and then the increase in electricity tariff.
It's not good, it's not fair. There is hunger on the land, madam. There is hunger. Our children are suffering, even though I'm not suffering as a mama, but children that we give birth to them and our grandchildren, they are suffering. No food. You will see a person looking starving, he is not eating well. What kind of country is that?
They hope this act will move the government of President Bola Tinubu to have a rethink in his style of governance.
Our government are not listening to us. Why? Please, they should listen to us. Let them bring peace. The peace is, let them, the subsidy and other things, they should bring it back as before.
They did everything possible to break this protest. It fell. Bribery was used, it fell. Intimidation was used, it fell. Consultation with traditional rulers and clergy, it fell. So, the government has played its last card, which is the joker. It has no option than to listen to the people of Nigeria.
We are pleading with Mr. President to have a rethink and see how he can reconsider some of the policies. We need to be alive to see how good those policies are. And at this point, we are saying we cannot bear it any longer.
Here at the Old Airport roundabout, where these protesters always gather to press home their demands, asking that governance in Nigeria should change for the better. Security agencies also have been on the ground to ensure there is no breakdown of law and order while they carry out their civic responsibility. From Jos, the Plateau State capital, Chizoba Anyanwe, reporting for News Central.
The police on Saturday said a policeman who was reported dead on the first day of the End Bad Governance protests has miraculously survived, and force spokesman Muyiwa Adedugba said in a statement on Saturday that 9 police officers sustained various degrees of injuries during attacks by protesters. He said one of them, who initially was reported dead, miraculously survived but remains in critical condition. At a briefing on Thursday, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, had said a policeman was murdered while on duty during the End Bad Governance nationwide protests. He had lamented that events in major cities on Thursday were mass uprising and looting and not protests. In the meantime, the Nigeria Police Force has refuted a recent report publicized by Amnesty International, which claims that 13 individuals have lost their lives due to the protests in Nigeria that began on 1st August 2024. Amnesty International had alleged that security personnel deliberately employed tactics designed to kill while managing gatherings and using firearms as a tactical tool for protest management. According to a statement by the Force Public Relations Officer, ACP Olumuyiwa Adedugba on Saturday. The report by the NGO is not the true picture of events from the demonstrations. The statement adds that the Nigeria police, personnel deployed to manage the protests, have acted professionally, refraining from using lethal weapons. We'll talk about this. Let's try to connect with our guest. Joining us to talk about this is former National Coordinator, Middle Belt Patriots, Zadaye Yusuf. We'll try to speak with them. Let's see if we have them join us on the news. Good evening. Glad to have you join me, Mr. Zadaye Yusuf. We have the president who has finally succumbed to growing calls, for him to address the nation. How did you receive this update?
You see, I think the major problem we have is not just having ruthless leaders who are unconnected, who have an absolute dissonance with the reality of the masses. But we have the kinds of leaders that at every point in time will stretch their luck. The manner in which the protest began yesterday, I would have thought that in the parts of the country where primarily people just went out and started looting, shattering glasses of windscreens of cars and intimidating people and all that, I thought even if it's not for the sake of attending to the genuine demands of Nigerians who set out to protest, you would want the security of lives and property. But then it looks as if the people are out, the people are angry, the people are making their points, noted, and best as we could see, they have been lawful. When you look at Plateau, when you look at, the key parts of Abuja, I know in the outskirts, there are places where touts, were doing some burnings and all of that. But in a general sense, we would say, indeed, the protesters were peaceful and it's a right they were exercising. But then it's looking as if you would have to plead with the government to even give a response. More like a relationship where I hurt somebody's feelings and I go on as if I don't know what happened. And the person says, hey, you did this and this and this to me. And it's as if the person again has to come back and say, you need to respond at least and say, I am aware of your pain. So basically, this is just another phase. And I think the protest is good in the sense that it shows us exactly who these people are. It's just another phase that tells you that primarily the well-being of the masses in Nigeria is not a concern to the leadership, because I see no reason whatsoever why there will be, people would have to solicit to a sitting president to even give a response to the genuine yearnings of his masses.
Now, talking about the response,
it's satanic. I love to use that word. It's satanic.
Well, talking about the response of the president, among the demands being raised so far by the protesters, which do you preempt or think the government should address?
I think key amongst them, which I think a lot of other issues, especially economically, inflation, prices of goods in the market, is the so-called removal of subsidy, which best as I can understand it is just a simple movement of whatever corruption characterized the so-called subsidy and moved it into the pockets of masses. So that has created virtually most of what we suffer, from what you used to buy for 140, 160 naira, shot up to 851,000 plus 700 and all of that. So I am thinking, which is not very likely, frankly, but I'm thinking what may likely make the people relax is removal of that, because it would have absorbed a lot of shock. But the man in power, I think from the comments he made when he removed the subsidy, it appears, like I said, they will always push Nigerians beyond the elastic limit, because at every opening or every breathing space they have, they take more from the masses. So I suspect he will likely do that. But being the kind of leaders they are, the crafty people they would likely capitalize on certain other things that have no bearing whatsoever with, the yearnings of the masses. I've looked at a couple of demands, and I saw people bringing in, the issues of Mazi, Nnamdi Kanu. I saw a whole lot of other things, judicial reforms and all of that. The truth of the matter is that I would hope that the measures that would affect the masses in the immediate should be focused upon, which understanding the kinds of people that are at the helm of affairs in Nigeria, I doubt they would do so. They may not necessarily have a problem ruling over ashes, but it's likely that anything that directly affects the masses, they may not listen to. They may touch on other things that don't exactly have any bearing with.
Mr. Yusuf, by way of reading the room, you talked about removal of fuel subsidy as a way to douse, the tension in the land. Are you optimistic the presidential address will quell further protests?
I'm a bit saddened because we have been, primarily, if you've heard of the phrase, the weaponization of hunger, I would say to you, it's taking almost a full effect in Nigeria, and it saddens me a lot. And it saddens me a lot because I will tell you, even though I don't sit in their council, but a lot of these men basically operate on the principle that it's the masses that will be on the streets. Just give them a day or two, all of them will start heading to look for their daily bread. So it's painful that the tempo, looking at the kind of force that the police are using in some cases, and while I don't have the full proof, but looking at what touts have chosen to do in certain other major cities that will serve as a pretext to basically unleash mayhem or begin to impose, what do you call it, curfews in different places. I think whether or not he satisfies, whether or not his address satisfies the yearnings of the masses, the protest may not still maintain the tempo it began with. And I'm saying so because it's deliberate that he is silent. So it's now looking as if the demands that the masses have are no longer primary. What is primary is that let him just show some sensitivity to what we're having. And that basically is why I always refer to the government as satanic, because they always take advantage of, you weaken the people and keep taking advantage of them. So the citizens are more or less of slaves in their eyes. So you torment them the more, torment them. So from demanding better economy, the betterment of our economy is more or less, we are hoping that he will just speak to people and show concern. And that's quite pathetic. That's very wicked to the soul of Nigeria.
Okay, I understand we're pressed for time, but just very briefly, we've seen skirmishes here and there, violent reports, vandalism, and also clash of protesters and as well as anti-protesters. In fact, the chief of the defense staff, and that's Christopher Musa, said they are observing and will deploy the military if things get out of hand. What will be the implication of these? Very briefly.
The implication of this would go in two ways. Either they capitalize on the thoughts, which at any point in time I would always suspect they are either directly sponsored, at least from the NSAS history, they are either government sponsored. They may either capitalize on that as a pretext to use brutal force to crush virtually any other person protesting, whether or not they are violent. Or what I fear is they may actually push Nigerians to a point where they may not necessarily be able to contain the whole thing. We love our country. Every Nigerian loves his country, loves his neighbor, and he wants the best. But I believe there is a limit to which you could actually push the people, which is basically what I am afraid of. So they would either use that force, capitalize on those places, which I feel, like I said, I suspect they would still be behind it, to crush virtually every other thing. They may succeed, and then they may just press the button they are not basically prepared to contain it, or didn't even see coming. Let us just hope for the best and expect, the worst.
Okay, we'll hold our breath to see what the presidential address holds. But thank you so much for your perspective on the news. Zadayi Yusuf, National Coordinator, Middle Belt Patriots. Many thanks indeed. 120 lawmakers in the House of Representatives have backed President Bola Tinubu's reforms in the oil and gas sector. The lawmakers, under the umbrella body of One Agenda, in a statement, also dissociated themselves from a recent publication attributable to a member which called for the resignation of the Group Chief Executive Officer of the NNPCL, Mele Kyari, and the Authority Chief Executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Hamed Farouk. Some of the lawmakers include Honorable Ibori Sueno Ehiateke, Honorable Martins Essing, Honorable Leko Jafaro Gambo, Honorable Amobi Godwin Orga, Honorable Abdullahi M. Gwazo, Honorable Dandadi S. Agoye. They urged NNPC Limited to continue implementing initiatives that would guarantee the country's self-sufficiency in oil and gas production. The Nigerian Communications Commission has issued a directive mandating all telecommunications operators in the country to limit the number of available tariff plans to a maximum of 7. The NCC has approved new tariff guidelines for operators designed to enhance transparency, improve consumer understanding, and foster fair competition among the licenses of the Commission. It also reduced the number of bundles offered per operator to 100, stressing that no subscriber can be on more than one tariff plan at a time. According to the NCC, a tariff plan is a structured pricing scheme outlining the charges and conditions under which telecommunications services are provided to subscribers. The news continues in West Africa, where the head of Niger's military-run government has accused France of wanting to destabilize the country 7 months after driving out French soldiers engaged in the fight against jihadism. Now, since seizing power on July 26 last year, the new government, led by General Abdurrahman Chiani, former head of the Presidential Guard, has reset its international partnerships. Niger regularly accuses neighboring Benin of harboring French bases, which Beninese authorities and France have always denied.
Le Niger, cette volonté maladive de déstabiliser le Niger, c'est propagé à travers le repositionnement de tous les agents de la DGSE française que nous avons chassés de notre territoire. Ils sont repositionnés au Bénin, je le dis et je le répète. Ils sont repositionnés au Nigeria. Je le rappelle, ce n'est pas des bataillons, ce n'est pas des compagnies, mais c'est des groupes d'agents subversifs qui évoluaient en tenue civile et avec des éléments des forces armées béninoises, eux-mêmes en tenue.
Senegal on Saturday summoned the Ukrainian ambassador for publishing a video in support of a recent deadly attacks against the Malian army and its Russian allies. Senegal's foreign ministry said in a statement that it rejects the terrorism in all its forms and cannot accept or its territory comments and gestures that excuse terrorism. It said it had summoned the ambassador to Dakar to remind him of the obligations of discretion, restraint and non-interference that must accompany the seriousness and solemnity of his mission. At the end of July, the Malian army and the Russian mercenaries group Wagner suffered one of the biggest setbacks in years in northern Mali, picking up heavy losses at the hands of rebels and jihadists. In East Africa, An Al-Shabaab suicide bomber and gunmen attacked a busy beach in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, killing at least 32 people and injuring scores of others in one of the deadliest strikes in the East African country in months. The Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists have been waging an insurgency against the international-backed federal government for more than 17 years and have already targeted the Lido Beach area, popular with business people and officials. Unverified videos shared online in the immediate aftermath of the attack showed people scattering along a street, with a number of clips purportedly showing bloodied bodies lying on the beachfront.
xalayto beach view hotel la yiraahdo ku yaala xeebta la yiraahdo anagoo isku nimid dhalinyaro badan ah qarax ka dhacay qarax koodan ku dhacay waxa ku yeerado asxaabteeda mid ugu qaalisan saaxiibkay ahay maqaaxi weyn oo ku taala beach view la yiraahdo oo caan weeyaan ha ahaatee markaas waxa ahay xalkeeda xal fadhiyo maqaayada shaah la cabay waa qaxweynay laakiin daqiiqad kadib saameyn bilaawatay qarax kooda dhacay waa la kala yaacay xabado kooxo hubeysan afar qofooda soo gashay xabad baa bilaabatay ciidanka marka mashadinaya xabad baa bilaabeen shacabku uma beelan qofkii soo yar uma beelan
waxa kamid ah dadkii xalay meesha ku sugnaa dhibaato weyn baa meeshaas ka dhacday waxaan ku sugnayn xeebta badda afkeeda ah waxa goobtaasi ka dhacay dhibaato aad u xooggan ruux nafti haliga ah ayaa meeshaasi isku qarxiyay shacabka dhexdiisa halka shacabka dhexdiisa ah goob u dhow albaabka beach view meeshaas waxa ka dhacay qasaare xooggan dad badan ayaa goobta daadsanaa dadkaas waxay isugu jireen dad shoogay dad dhintay iyo dad dhaawacmay intaba
maanta de waxay soo jeeday dhigii wax la soo haysto dhiigga ugu muhiimsan dhiiggii aan soo haysto oo dadka aan ku caawiyo oo qofkii dad badan oo waxaa jira dhiig la'aan isbitaalada la yaala runtii aan dhiiggii ku caawiyo ayaan go'aansaday saakaan soo kalahay fayl badan waqti dhul badan waa soo maray intaas waxaan soo maraya waxay tahay in dhiiggiga sida haysto.
In North Africa, thousands of Moroccans protested in Rabat on Saturday in support of Palestinians and to condemn normalization with Israel, holding portraits of killed Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. Hamas called for a day of rage on Friday for the burial of its chief Ismail Haniyeh, killed 2 days earlier in a strike in Iran, which the Islamist movement in Tehran have blamed on Israel. Waving Palestinian flags and brandishing pictures of Haniyeh and a cardboard coffin adorned with his image, thousands of people marched to the parliament building with black and white keffiyeh scarves, which are symbols of Palestinian cause, draped across their shoulders.
جينا ندو بهذه الجرائم التي تقوم بها إسرائيل ولأن هذا الشيء اللي وقعت في هذه الاغتيالات اللي وقعت مؤخرا بإسماعيل هنية فهذه جريمة لازم نوقفوا ضدها وضد كل من يطبع مع إسرائيل لأن إسرائيل عدوة الشعوب لا مستقبل لها.
المسيرة هذه جاءت تقول كفى من هذه الحرب، أوقفوا هذه المجازر، أوقفوا هذه الإبادة، أوقفوا هذا القتل يعني البشع جدا. مع الأسف تكالب الغرب، الآن كنشوفوا نرى ما تعد له أمريكا من عدة قوية إلى ترمي بها إلى الشرق الأوسط. ماذا تريد من هذا سوى الفتنة؟
Thank you for staying with us. Bangladeshi student leaders on Saturday said they would carry on a planned nationwide civil disobedience campaign until Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned following last month's deadly police crackdown on protesters. Rallies against civil service job quotas sparked days of mayhem in July that killed more than 200 people in some of the worst unrests of Hasina in 15-year tenure. Troops deployments briefly restored order, but crowds returned to the streets in huge numbers this week ahead of an all-out non-cooperation movement aimed at paralyzing the government's plan to begin on Sunday.
বিচারের আওতায় আনতে হবে এবং শুধু শুধু শেখ হাসিনা নয়, পুরো মন্ত্রী পরিষদ, সরকার সবাইকে পদত্যাগ করতে হবে এবং এই যে রেজিম, এই যে ফ্যাসিবাদী শাসন ব্যবস্থা, এটাকে বিরোধ করতে হবে। আমরা জনগণকে সর্বাত্মক অসহযোগ আন্দোলনে নামার আহ্বান সর্বাত্মক অসহযোগ আন্দোলন চলবে। এই খুনি সরকারকে আমরা কোনোভাবেই সমর্থন দিব না, কোনোভাবেই কোঅপারেট করব না।
Far-right protesters clashed with British police as unrest linked to misinformation about a mass stabbing that killed 3 young girls spread across the UK on Saturday. Demonstrators threw chairs, flares and bricks at offices in the northwestern city of Liverpool. There were also reported scuffles between police and protesters in nearby Manchester. In sports, history was made on Saturday at the Paris 2024 Olympics when Julian Alfred stormed to the women's 100-meter title, becoming St. Lucia's first ever medalist in Olympic history. Alfred dominated the final, taking victory by a clear margin in a national record of 10.72 seconds. Pre-race favorite and American world champion Sha'Carri Richardson took silver in 10.87 seconds, while compatriot Melissa Jefferson finishing third in 10.92 seconds. Nigeria's Rosemary Chukwuma concluded her run in the women's 100-meter event, finishing 8th in the semi-final. Nigerian sprinter Koinsola Ajayi has made a remarkable debut at the Paris Olympics by advancing to the men's 100-meter semi-finals. Ajayi won heat 5 for a time of 10.02 seconds, defeating reigning Olympic champion Lamont Master Jacobs, who finished second with 10.05 seconds. Ghana's Abdulrasheed Saminu was third with 10.06 seconds. Nigerian teammate Favor Ashe also secured the semi-final spot as a non-automatic qualifier, despite finishing fourth in his heats with 10.16 seconds. Ashe edged out Greenair, who clocked 10.17 seconds by a narrow margin. Now, both athletes are competing in their first Olympic Games and are now among the top 27 sprinters in the world. Zheng Quinn of China defeated Donna Kveitch in straight sets to win Olympic women's singles gold in Paris. Zheng, who lost in the Australian Open final in January, defeated her opponent 6-2, 6-3. Meanwhile, all is set for the men's singles final on Sunday when 24-time Grand Slam winner Novak Djokovic of Serbia faces Spaniard Carlos Alcaraz in the men's singles final and a repeat of last month's Wimbledon final, in which the latter won. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach has addressed the debate on defining women in sport. He challenged critics questioning the eligibility of certain athletes in women's events, inviting them to provide a scientific-based new definition of womanhood. Bach emphasized the IOC's openness to a new perspective while opposing politically motivated interference in sport. He expressed concern about the aggressive tone of the debate on social media, calling the hate speech and abuse totally unacceptable. Now, these comments come amid ongoing controversies surrounding transgender and intersex athletes in women's sport. The IOC is striving to balance inclusivity and fairness in competition, a challenge that has continued to spark heated discussions. Bach's stance suggests caution against hasty changes to long-standing definition in women's sport, while remaining open to scientifically grounded arguments for reform. And that's all on the news. Let's take a look again at some of the major stories. President Bola Tinubu to address Nigerians on Sunday amid hunger protests. As End Bad Governance protests have entered day 3, Nigerians have remained resolute in their demands. We also told you at least 32 have been killed in Al-Shabaab attack on Mogadishu beach in Somalia. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba. It's bye for now.